I know that Diana doesn't truly like me. She only married me to get back at her ex-boyfriend 3 years after our wedding. Their scandal exploded across trending searches. I was mocked online as a cheating husband, but I never let it anger me, nor did I consider divorcing her. What she doesn't know is that I'm dying, and all I want is to spend my remaining time with her. But even this small wish of mine, she refuses to fulfill tonight. Diana didn't come home. I saw her trending on the internet. As the most popular actress at the moment, she was surrounded by stars, sitting right at the center of it all. She was wearing a red dress, just like the one she wore when we first met, looking as stunning and beautiful as ever. I don't mind her having fun outside because every time she comes home, she would always cuddle up to me and say sweetly, "Those rumors are just the company's way of boosting my popularity. I've always had only you." I believed her, but today, I felt uneasy. I saw a familiar face among the crowd. Her ex-boyfriend, Mike. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Sister Sophia, Diana's manager. "Diana is drunk. Come pick her up." I quickly got up, but a dizzy spell hit me and my nose started to bleed. I paused, wiped it away carelessly. It's just a hereditary condition. Nothing more urgent than picking up Diana. I couldn't let her know. She's too sensitive about blood. I rushed to get there as fast as I could, but when I arrived, I found Mike holding Diana in a corner of the bar. "Mike, give her back to me." He looked up at me, his sharp brows and rebellious demeanor unchanged. "Oh, so you really did get what you wanted and married Diana?" I took her from him, holding her in my arms, finally feeling some comfort. "I'm leaving." I wanted to get out of that uncomfortable situation quickly, but Mike's smug voice came from behind me. "Do you know why Diana's drunk? Because I just got back to the country, and she couldn't wait to throw me a welcome back party." I took a deep breath, suppressing my anger. I know Diana is kind-hearted. There's no need to say more. I placed her in the car, and she sluggishly opened her eyes, giving me a tired smile. "Victory, you're here." Her dependent look softened my heart. I bent down and kissed her on the forehead, comforting her. "Honey's here to take you home. Go to sleep." She nodded quietly and quickly fell into a deep sleep. People always assumed Diana didn't love me, just because 3 years ago Mike rejected her publicly and chose to leave the country. Out of spite, she put a ring on my finger and married me. I became the lucky guy everyone thought was fortunate to marry a beautiful, fair-skinned movie star, but no one knew how truly happy I was. People kept saying that once Mike returned, Diana would leave me and get back with him. But in the 3 years we were together, Diana grew to love me more, and we got along better and better. She couldn't cook, but she learned to make porridge and soup to help with my weak stomach. She'd act cute to get an extra scoop of ice cream when she was on her period. She would always explain away any rumors, even turning down roles with explicit content for me, using stand-ins for kissing scenes at our best. She held me and seriously asked if I wanted a child. As a star, she knew the challenges pregnancy and childbirth would bring her, but she still wanted to have our child. I truly believed we were in love. Until the day I was diagnosed with a terminal illness at the hospital, I didn't know how to tell Diana. We hadn't even finished discussing what we'd name our first child. But then Mike came back, and she threw him a welcome-back party at the best bar in town. That night, they talked for hours. The next day, Diana suddenly wanted to take me to a party. It turned out Mike had returned to the country to raise funds. His project abroad had failed terribly, and the entire Song family was in financial trouble. As the future heir of the Song family, the once noble young Master Song had to bow his head and seek investments. When Diana brought me there, the place was already in chaos, the atmosphere heated. Mike was drinking with a man, his face flushed. "Young Master Song, didn't you say you wanted investments? Fine, I'll drink 1 cup, you drink 10. If you can outdrink me, I'll invest in you right away." He drank cup after cup with a careless grin. But as soon as Diana and I walked in, his smile froze. He started drinking even more aggressively, and perhaps choked, lowering his head to cough violently. Seeing Diana, the people around started jeering, "Young Master Song, weren't you and Diana a couple before? You could ask the great actress Diana for help." Anyway, Diana's had her share of scandals. It wouldn't be impossible for her to support you. Suddenly, without warning, Mike, with his red eyes, punched that man to the ground. "Damn it, you brat, you dare hit me? Don't even think about investments, I'll sue you." The man got up, cursing, but Mike roared, "Say whatever you want about me, but don't you dare say a word about Diana. I'm the one who wronged her." I clearly felt Diana's hand tighten around mine, her body tensing. Then she smiled, a cold, clear smile. "You can joke about anything, but my husband is right here. Mike's a disgusting scumbag. There's no way I would help him." Immediately, people started flattering us, praising us as a loving couple, a model pair in the entertainment industry. I smiled but said nothing, though my heart grew colder with every passing second. Diana rarely asked me to attend parties because she knew I didn't like them. So why did she bring me here? Was it because of Mike? If he weren't here, Diana definitely wouldn't have come, right? Seeing Diana truly not helping him, the man who got punched laughed even more arrogantly. "I heard your song family is bankrupt. Do you still think you're the beloved young master from 3 years ago? If you kneel down now and clean my shoes, I won't sue you and I'll even invest in you. How about that?" He extended his shoe, stained with alcohol. It was clear he was thoroughly enjoying humiliating the once proud heir. Mike stood up straight, his fists slowly clenching. Just as everyone thought he was going to strike again, he knelt on one knee. Everyone froze in shock. I noticed Diana's gaze was fixed on him too. The once rebellious, untouchable young master song from 3 years ago had actually knelt down for a few million in investments. He spoke slowly, lifting his head with difficulty, tears glinting in his eyes. "I'm not kneeling for your investment," Mike said, his voice steady. "I'm apologizing to the woman I hurt deeply. 3 years ago, I didn't know how to appreciate her, so I lost the most precious thing in my life. I'm sorry, I truly regret it." The room went quiet. Everyone knew Mike was speaking directly to Diana, hoping for her forgiveness. But as her husband standing right next to her, what was I supposed to do? The man, feeling humiliated, kicked Mike hard, knocking him to the floor. "Stop it!" Diana couldn't hold herself back anymore and rushed to stop him. "My manager and lawyer will handle the compensation. Now leave." The powerful presence of the movie queen made the man retreat quickly, tail between his legs. Everyone in the room turned their attention toward me, waiting for me to step up, act like a man, and take my wife away. But a sudden dizziness swept over me. I quickly covered my nose, rushed out the door. I couldn't let Diana see me with a nosebleed. Once I managed to clean up, I returned to the room, but it was empty. The waiter informed me that Diana had paid the bill and left, taking Mike with her. Left behind, I was alone. At home, I couldn't sleep. Diana still hadn't come back. At 3 a.m., I saw a post on Diana's Weibo account. It was a side profile of her, sleeping on a couch. The caption read, "You are the soft spot beneath my hard armor." The comments flooded in quickly. Shippers were the most excited. "The fallen noble young master X, the stunning movie queen. My ship has finally resurrected." Others chimed in. 3 years ago, they were the hottest couple. Finally, they're back together. Support Diana in rekindling her love. I can't stand that ugly man, Victor. He's got no physique, no looks. He doesn't belong with our movie queen at all. They mocked me, but I just felt relieved. At least Diana hadn't slept with him. I tried to ignore it, but then someone posted a picture of Diana and me in the comments. In the photo, I looked thin and ordinary in my plaid shirt. Not ugly, but not a perfect match for Diana, who looked radiant and stunning. "I'm really about to vomit. Ugly men should stay away from beauties. Support the movie queen and get a divorce quickly. They don't look like a couple at all." Then a flood of old photos of Diana and Mike from 3 years ago appeared. Every image looked like something out of a drama, with a handsome man and a beautiful woman. 2 words, perfect match. "Diana, don't fall for ugly guys. Find a handsome man. Look how perfect you two were together. All female stars. Repeat after me 100 times. Don't date ugly guys and definitely don't marry them." The post quickly became the most trending topic. Soon, Diana responded, "I don't have a thing for ugly men. I did get back together with Mike." The internet went wild. They claimed it was a victory, a success in restoring the movie queen's taste. My hands went cold as I watched, feeling lightheaded. Blood started dripping from my nose, soon staining my pants red. My vision blurred, and I struggled to dial my good friend Marco. Take me to the hospital. Clean up the blood at home." Your wife's affair is outrageous. What's wrong with you, huh? Marco's voice faded as I passed out, just hoping he'd clean up the blood before Diana saw it. She faints at the sight of blood, and I didn't want her to be uncomfortable. When I woke up, Marco was staring at me, his eyes red, coldly mocking me. Victor, this is the woman you married. Look at the mess you made of yourself. You big fool. You gave up your position as the young master of the Song family for her. Now your wife's been taken away. You've got a terminal illness and you've ended up like this. Isn't it laughable? I moved slightly, relieved to find I was okay. She doesn't know about this. It's my choice. A pretty funny and melodramatic story. Actually, I'm the real son of the Song family. I got lost when I was a child, and that's how Mike was adopted and became the young master of the Song family. I found out about this in college. At that time, I was in love with Diana, who was dating Mike. Later, I used the identity of the young master to force Mike to break up with her and go abroad. The condition was I'd never return to the Song family, and he couldn't tell Diana. But now, with the Song family bankrupt, Mike has come back to take Diana away, and I'm left with nothing. Maybe this is karma. I stared at the pale ceiling and let out a laugh. Marco had already spoken to the doctor, and I was only eligible for conservative treatment. Maybe you should just let it go. After all, Diana never loved you from the start. His words stung, and the image of the photo I'd seen on Weibo flashed in my mind. Forcibly picked fruit isn't sweet, but it still quenches thirst. Forget it. Don't talk nonsense, we're doing fine. Marco lowered his head and wiped a tear. I'm really unlucky to have a love-obsessed friend like you. You're dying, and still thinking about a wife who doesn't love you. I laughed out loud. I'm really lucky to have a friend who cares so much about me. Marco laughed too, just like when we first met in the school infirmary back then. He'd gotten into a fight with some thugs because of his straightforward personality and ended up in the infirmary. I, with my frail body, had fainted during military training and also ended up in the infirmary. From that moment, we became brothers and never separated. We sat in silence for a long while before he suddenly spoke. Seriously, you should divorce her, then I'll take you on a trip to Tibet. Didn't you always want to go to Tibet? My words got stuck in my throat, unsure of what to say. Yes, my biggest dream in life had been to see the clear blue sky, the endless grasslands, and the lavender fields. Most importantly, the grandmother at the orphanage once told me she was from Tibet and that her greatest wish was to return to her roots. I had asked Diana many times if we could go to Tibet together when she wasn't busy with work. She always agreed verbally, then would turn around and focus on her next movie. Seeing Marco's serious expression, I knew he wasn't joking this time. He just wanted to ensure my final days were spent with dignity. Let me think about it. My words circled in my throat, but I still didn't agree. Maybe if Diana truly loved me and couldn't bear to part with me, how could I leave first? I returned home, and Diana hurried to grab my hand, eager to explain herself. I didn't post that Weibo, I explained. I fell asleep on the couch that night and Mike posted it himself. As soon as I saw the news, I rushed home. Why weren't you at home? Where did you go? You look so pale. I forced a smile, lowered my head, and tightly hugged her waist, greedily inhaling her faint fragrance. But there was a trace of men's cologne mixed with it. I'm fine. I believe you, she sighed in relief, returning my embrace. I didn't want to argue anymore. After that day, things on the internet only got worse, and Mike sent me a message asking to meet at his house. When I arrived, I found him smoking, surrounded by smoke, with a few bottles of whiskey scattered on the table. Sit, he gestured, and I took a seat, pouring myself a glass of water. My purpose for coming back to the country is to take back my woman. Victor, you understand what I mean, right? He exhaled a puff of smoke and squinted at me. I smiled. Diana is my wife. We're legally married. You, the homewrecker, seem to be a bit out of your mind. He paused, flicking his cigarette and stubbing it out. You've made some progress since I last saw you. If it weren't for Marco back in high school, I could have beaten you to death. Now you're talking big, he said, his tone mocking. I shrugged nonchalantly. Try hitting me now. I'll fall to the ground immediately and claim 50,000 from you. Oh, I forgot. Your song family is bankrupt. The once grand young master song now has to drink with people to get investments. You look pretty good. Maybe you should try working at a duck club and see if the song family can recover from your earnings." His face darkened, and in anger he threw the bottle he was holding, crashing it on the floor. He followed it up with a fast and furious left hook. But I wasn't weak either. Having learned taekwondo, I dodged easily and landed a solid punch to his stomach. Ugh! His face went pale as he stumbled backward. "Fuck you, ungrateful bastard!" he yelled, grabbing a stick from the side and swinging it at me. I could have easily dodged, but suddenly, a heavy feeling returned to my head. Dizziness, that damn familiar sensation. I stumbled forward, taking 2 hits. After the blows, I collapsed to the ground, coughing up blood. He hit hard. I could feel my organs being damaged. "I thought you'd be tougher, but after 3 years, you're still just trash," he mocked, tossing the stick aside. He squatted down in front of me, sneering. I struggled to get up, and with what little strength I had left, I threw a punch at his face. Just then, I heard a familiar voice from behind. "What's going on here?" I turned to see Diana standing at the door with a fruit basket, shock written on her face. She quickly walked over, her gaze fixed on the blood on the floor, and asked Mike, "Why did you hit Victor? Don't you know he's not in good health?" Mike's eyes reddened, but he stubbornly held back his tears. "He called me a homewrecker and came here to teach me a lesson, so I fought back." Diana's voice softened as she turned to me. "Victor, go home. I'll handle this." My stomach burned with pain, but the ache in my heart was worse. I tried to stay calm. "Diana, come home with me. I'm hurt." Diana looked at me, confusion and sadness in her eyes. She shook her head. "Go home. I'm going to have dinner with Mike. I don't want to see you right now." I smiled bitterly, clutching my stomach, feeling the searing pain. "Why?" "I'm your husband." Her tears fell, her expression filled with struggle and pain. "Then why did you force Mike to go abroad and break up with me 3 years ago? Wasn't that wrong?" My heart went cold, the chill spreading through every part of me. Diana had discovered the truth. Before I could explain further, Mike stepped between us. "There's nothing more to say. The truth is out, Victor, you're out," he said, eyes filled with malicious satisfaction, his voice full of triumph. I felt another nosebleed coming on and had to turn away in embarrassment, running off. It was fine, I thought. I believed Diana would forgive me. I made mistakes, but those were in the past. I didn't believe this would be the end for us. But I was wrong. When I woke up in the hospital again, the internet was flooded with slander against me. Mike had exposed the deal we made 3 years ago, selectively revealing the truth about who the real young master was and how I forced him to break up with Diana, taking advantage of the situation to marry her. My reputation was completely destroyed. Now the entire internet was calling for Diana to divorce me. Can you just die, ugly man? Scum. Forcing a couple to break up and go abroad. Ugh, it's so disgusting. Human scum behavior. How can such a despicable person exist? Oh my God, isn't that illegal? Why doesn't he just die? Police, please arrest him. It's so disgusting. Divorce quickly. I can't believe my movie queen sister was deceived for 3 years. I'm so angry. Divorce immediately. Even my address was exposed. People threw rotten eggs at me, poured feces on me, threw rotten vegetables, and lit candles on my Weibo, telling me to die. The windows of my house were smashed. I didn't care about any of this, having endured much worse violence in my youth. A few days later, I was knocked out by a rock thrown by an anti-fan. Before I lost consciousness, I thought I saw Diana running toward me in a panic. I was bleeding. Would Diana be scared? Mike had always hated me. We went to the same high school, and I always topped the class, keeping him in second place. So he started bullying me in private, pouring water on me, tearing up my homework, beating me, and smearing glue on my chair. Because the Song family was wealthy and influential, the school turned a blind eye and only asked Mike not to go too far so I could still take the college entrance exam. After all, I was a promising candidate for Tsinghua and Peking University. After I got lost, I lived in an orphanage. Once, the grandmother who raised me came to visit. She saw Mike and his gang beating me up in an alley, and her fury knew no bounds. At nearly 70 years old, she raised her cane and struck Mike on the head. In a moment of anger, he shoved her, causing her to fall. She hit the ground and died of a heart attack. The Song family offered me a large sum of money, enough to cover my university education, with one condition: I had to erase any memory of the incident. I collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably, yet accepted the money through my tears. Since Mike was a minor, even if I reported him to the police, no action could be taken. I donated the entire sum to the orphanage, hoping it would help take care of more children, fulfilling my grandmother's wish. Every time I looked at her empty room, the pain in my chest was unbearable. I vowed that Mike would pay for what he'd done. Later I met Marco, who protected me and helped me finish high school. During university, I crossed paths with Diana. She was beautiful, kind-hearted, but still with Mike. One day, during a routine school checkup, I found out by accident that I had a hereditary disease, one that only the Song family carried. Determined to uncover the truth, I secretly got a strand of Mrs. Song's hair and sent it for a DNA test. What I discovered was absurd. The woman who had so arrogantly bought off my grandmother's life was, in fact, my biological mother. My hatred grew even stronger, and I knew I couldn't return to the Song family, nor did I want anything from them. I confronted Mike. Of course, he didn't hesitate to abandon Diana and take on the identity of the Song family's young master. He told me that money was the world's only true principle. In order to make room for me, he chose to leave for abroad, breaking up with Diana. All of this because of Mike. But why should he return now without an ounce of guilt and take everything from me? No, I wouldn't let it happen. Groggily, I opened my eyes to find Diana lying by my bedside. I reached out to touch her hair, hoping to wake her up. "You're awake, Victor. Are you all right?" she asked, her delicate makeup gone, her face raw and exhausted. "I'm fine. I'm doing great," I said, forcing a smile, but she broke down in tears. "You say you're fine, but you're sick. It's terminal." I held her gently, offering what little comfort I could. "It's all right. I'll get better soon. Don't forget I'm your miracle brother." Diana froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. "You're the miracle brother who took me home when I was little?" The truth is, I've loved her for years. We were the same age. When we were 7, I found Diana lost. She was perfectly dressed, standing in the middle of the street, looking lost and confused. I saw a woman trying to take her away. Without thinking, I rushed over, kicking and biting, taking Diana with me. "Brother, I don't know where my mom is. I only remember a place with a pink unicorn." Seeing her cry uncontrollably, I took it upon myself to find her mother. "I will find your mom," I promised. She stopped crying and asked if I was serious. I nodded and patted her shoulder. "Of course, I'm your miracle brother." That wasn't entirely true. I took Diana to the orphanage, and for 3 days I scoured the streets, finally finding her mother's shop and bringing her back. I was too young to know to call the police, but I didn't mind. My shoes were worn down, but the end result was worth it. Diana wouldn't be an orphan like me, left to be bullied. This knowledge made Diana cry even harder. Soon, the online slander faded away. Diana clarified that we were truly in love, and she publicly told her fans she would never divorce me in this lifetime. If they didn't like Victor, they could unfollow her. It was the first time Diana responded so boldly to online criticism, and before long, people began saying we were a loving couple. Actually, Diana and Victor are great together. Diana doesn't even do kissing scenes anymore. Isn't that love? Since Diana and Victor got together, her emotions have stabilized. She smiles more and spends holidays with him. She's clearly with the right person. You say Mike and her look good together, but I don't think it seems real. The smiles when Diana is with Victor show true affection, all love. Am I the only one who doesn't think Victor is ugly? He's just too thin. Diana stayed with me through my treatment, putting aside all her filming commitments to care for me with her whole heart. But Mike wouldn't give up. Today, Diana was gently feeding me the soup she made herself, her eyes full of tenderness. But as soon as her phone rang, she immediately put down the spoon, her face changing, and walked out to answer the call. The soup went cold, but she didn't return. I sat there watching the sunset, slowly fading from daylight to darkness, my heart sinking with each passing moment. She didn't come back that night, nor did she reply to my messages. That night, my hunger grew unbearable, and my stomach began to cramp. A nurse found me during rounds, pale and bleeding from my nose. It was the first time I had to be rushed to the emergency room. When I regained consciousness, I could hear shouting outside. Marco was yelling at someone. "Just leave Victor alone. Damn it. He gave up his identity as the Song family's young master for you. He's practically losing his life for you. Can you just let him go?" "I know I've wronged him," Diana's voice replied, choking with emotion. "Don't act so pathetic. If I didn't have a rule against hitting women, you'd be on your knees right now. You ran off the moment Mike called, leaving Victor to nearly die in the hospital. How could you do that?" Marco spat, his voice furious. "He's not going to live long anyway, and now he nearly died just to give your lover his place." "It's not like that. He said he had a car accident, and I panicked and went to him. Enough! Shut up! Go wherever you want, but divorce Victor and set him free." The hallway fell silent. Diana didn't speak another word, only her sobs could be heard. I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Marco, come in first," I called out weakly, and they both entered. Diana's tear-filled eyes looked so pitiful. For the first time, I looked at her coldly. I said, "Let Marco in. You go out." The soup had long gone cold, and so had my heart. As I lay there, close to death in the emergency room, my thoughts weren't of Diana or anyone else. Instead, they were of Tibet. I had heard that Tibet held the most devout beliefs, and that its sacred mountains and lakes could sense things. I wanted to scatter my grandmother's ashes in Tibet and tell her that I had finally brought her back home. Diana bit her lip, perhaps for the first time feeling uneasy about how I treated her, and she stormed off in anger. I glanced at Marco and smiled. "Brother, let's go to Tibet." He walked over, gently rubbing my bald head, bare from chemotherapy, and nodded with a tearful smile. "If you don't want to smile, don't. It's just a woman. We don't need her. We'll go to Tibet together." I softly agreed, feeling lighter than I had in a long time. "Okay, Diana, I no longer want to wait for you. If you could abandon me once for Mike, you could easily do it again. But I can't keep waiting for the day you'll truly come back to me. This time, your miracle brother needs to live for himself." Finally, I arrived in Tibet. I bundled up in a down jacket, pulled on my hat, and followed Marco up the snowy mountains toward the Potala Palace. We marveled at the breathtaking views before finding the perfect spot to lay my grandmother to rest. As we stood in the square of the Potala Palace, we noticed a group of people prostrating themselves in prayer. I coughed a few times and asked a nearby Tibetan man, "What are they praying for?" He answered in broken Mandarin, explaining that they were praying with pure kindness, prostrating themselves to bless the world's future and wish peace and happiness for all living beings. Marco and I were deeply moved. We had never seen such selflessness. People without any desires, void of the stench of money and power, simply with a pure heart. As I gazed at the golden sunrise over the mountains, the thought of my impending death struck me, and I suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of peace. "Marco, I want to prostrate too," I said. He was shocked and immediately tried to stop me. "You're crazy! You're terminally ill, and doing this will only speed up your death." I smiled, took off my scarf, went to a street vendor to buy the necessary items for the pilgrimage, and began the route from Lhasa to Yamdrok Yumtso. I remember my grandmother telling me stories about her youth, how she had walked this very path. I wanted to experience the beauty of this road for myself. Marco, worried, followed closely, bringing medicine with him. The journey was 1,100 kilometers long. Starting from Lhasa, I was naturally recognized by Diana's fans along the way. One of them even began live-streaming my pilgrimage, mocking me with a grin. "Look, everyone, the shameless husband of the movie queen is prostrating. Isn't this just for attention?" The viewers flooded in, and Guodamu, proud and smug, continued to ridicule me, amping up the hype. "I think he's just putting on a show. Everyone knows that prostrating is extremely tough, and only a very few can actually finish it." I ignored him and continued my prostrations, wearing out my knees, palms, and forehead with each movement, not saying a word, because this was the land my grandmother had walked inch by inch. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. 10 days passed, and people watching the live stream were shocked by my perseverance. My knees, palms, and forehead were covered with wounds from countless prostrations. I had to stop now and then to wipe the blood from my nose. A doctor who recognized me from the hospital mentioned my terminal illness on the stream. Without my knowing, public opinion began to shift. People began to apologize, admiring my determination. But I didn't care about their sympathy. Every time I finished prostrating at a place, I would stop and donate some money. Guodamu, who had been streaming me for so long, started to ask, curiously, "Victor, why do you donate so much money?" I paused, looking at the camera, and suddenly thought of the orphanage. Because I'm an orphan, I hope the money I donate can make the orphans in the world a little luckier. As soon as I said this, a group of people began digging into my background. They discovered I was a top student, an orphan, and had been living alone for years. I smiled, realizing what they were trying to do. Actually, I wasn't originally an orphan. I was taken in by the orphanage after I got lost, so I'm deeply grateful to them. I didn't explain further, just continued my prostrations. After I dropped that bombshell, the internet went wild, trying to uncover more about my past. Suddenly, there was a fervent search for my parents, as netizens tried to redeem themselves, easing their consciences. A detailed essay about my life experiences went viral online. Meanwhile, in Shanghai, Mike was panicking. Diana confronted him fiercely, and their argument was secretly filmed and posted online. Marco described the scene to me vividly. In the busy street, Diana, dressed in white, slapped Mike hard across the face, tears welling up in her eyes. "Why do this to Victor? What did he ever do to you?" Mike, his eyes red, viciously kicked Diana, causing the onlookers to gasp. "What a beast! Hitting a woman!" Some in the crowd, aware of the backstory, clicked their tongues in disdain. Scum man and trash woman. Both of them deserve each other. Mike seemed indifferent. He straightened up and gave a small, mocking smile. Because he played me first. In truth, he could never go back to the Song family. He wasn't just lost. The Song family abandoned him because of his incurable congenital disease. They couldn't bear to have their heir, someone who could die at any moment. That's why they left Victor. The Song family never wanted him. He came back to threaten me. Mike's face darkened, then twisted with rage. It's laughable, really. The only reason I broke up with you was because I got tired of you. You aren't even that pretty, your body's average, and your personality is terrible. I can't understand why Victor worships you, using all his energy to love you. If it weren't for your money, do you think I'd stick around? A woman like you? I've slept with you so much, I'm sick of it. Diana trembled with fury, her eyes red, her heart shattered. She realized that the only person who had ever truly cared for her was the one she had hurt so deeply. She needed to atone for her mistakes. Wiping her tears, Diana regained her cold, emotionless superstar persona. Then the Song family will never rise again. Every one of you should be buried, including you. You owe him 2 lives. With that, she turned and walked away. Mike, left behind, laughed maniacally, clutching his stomach. "Ha ha ha, what about you? Aren't you also at fault?" Diana turned away, tears streaming down her face as she walked off, biting her lip. She thought of Victor, broken and scarred after his journey in Tibet, and it felt like a blade was slicing through her heart. She longed to bring him back, especially knowing his time was running out, but she couldn't. Before she could face him again, she had to seek justice for all the wrongs done to him. The story circulating online was, of course, mine. This detailed account explained how I went from being the heir of the Song family to an orphan, cruelly bullied by Mike in school, leading to my grandmother's fatal heart attack. It also told of how Diana and I had known each other since childhood, and how I had saved her life. Later, I discovered my true heritage in college and used that information to strike a deal with Mike. He chose his position in the Song family over Diana, leaving her behind. The essay included photos of me in the orphanage, looking frail and vulnerable, the bruises from high school bullying, and my numb face at my grandmother's funeral. It also shared the online mockery I faced after Mike returned, showing images of me post-diagnosis, with my head shaved, gaunt, and wearing a hospital gown. Each of these moments might have broken someone else, but there I was, standing in Tibet with a calm demeanor, continuing my pilgrimage with peace in my heart. Though I had gained a little weight and my skin was sun-kissed, I looked healthier than before. The internet was shocked. No one expected Mike, a fake young master, to be so audacious, bullying, causing death, and stealing another man's wife. His sins were beyond words. The truth came crashing down as more people revealed Mike's wrongdoings. He'd been smoking, drinking, and gambling since his teenage years, bullying classmates who were smarter than him. He pursued Diana in college due to a ridiculous bet. He noticed I was falling for her and made a bet with his friends that he could win the school beauty over in 3 months. Mike's gambling addiction abroad had contributed to the Song family's financial downfall. After Diana and Mike's confrontation in the street, he set a trap, and soon he was caught for his gambling activities. This time, the Song family couldn't save him. After ensuring Mike was taken care of in prison, Diana rushed to Tibet. The sun blazed down on her delicate face, almost burning her as she saw me, covered in scars. She broke down in tears, kneeling before me. "Please, let's go to the hospital. We'll go to the best hospital, okay? You can still get better. Don't do this to yourself." She begged me, walking behind me as I continued my prostrations. "I never cheated on you. I've always loved you. He lied to me about the car accident and I helped him out of pity." Diana cried, her bare face showing her raw emotions. "Victor, aren't you my miracle brother?" Her words hit me, but I didn't stop. The Song family's debts led them to sell their assets to Southeast Asia. I didn't lend a single penny to Mike. "I've avenged you. Please, just look at me." She knelt down, sobbing, pleading for my forgiveness. I paused for a moment, sighed, and turned to look at her. "Diana, I don't love you anymore. We're done." "I'm still your wife," she said, shaking her head, unwilling to let go. I looked up at the sky where kites flew freely and eagles soared. "That marriage certificate is just a piece of paper. It means nothing. When I loved you, I would have died for you. But now that I don't love you, nothing you do matters to me. Go back. I'll finish this journey on my own." Diana didn't leave. She and Marco stayed with me, watching as I continued my prostrations. The journey was 1,100 kilometers long. Whether it rained or shone, I kept moving forward. Slowly, my heart began to feel lighter. I used to be filled with anger, sorrow, and desperation, but along this journey, I became more at peace. Eventually, my hereditary illness took its toll. I could no longer breathe, my organs were in agony, and my nose bled. I collapsed at Namtso, one of the largest lakes in Tibet, also known as the Heavenly Jewel. They rushed to call for help, but I stopped them. At that moment, I felt like I was resting in my grandmother's arms, completely at peace. The sky above me was a deep sapphire, cloudless and bright. I remembered the moment before my grandmother passed. Her gray-white hair spread out on the floor, like the scene of an aging heroine in a black-and-white film. She lay in my arms, her face a painful blue and purple, her lips blackened. Grandmother had taught me their tribe's tradition. When people die, they should be buried with a smile. Marco. His face was red, tears streaming down his face, his expression contorted with sorrow. "Don't cry," I told him, remembering what grandmother had said. "Jiao Jiao, we cried when we were born, so why shouldn't we smile when we say goodbye?" I smiled. "We cried when we were born, so why shouldn't we smile when we say goodbye?" He froze, his crying stopping. Ha 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 ha. His laughter echoed in my mind, as if I was holding my grandmother in that dark alley. He cried without tears, and I laughed without joy. I laughed as I stopped breathing. At least in this life, I had gained, lost, and worshipped. In the end, I became my grandmother's family, as I had always wished, accompanying her back to heaven. Extra, Marco's perspective. The first time I met Victor, I knew this guy was tough. Despite his frail body, he had strength that most people didn't see. After being bullied by Mike for 2 years, most would have been broken, but he stayed silent, always at the top of his class. We met in the infirmary during our senior year military training. I decided to watch over this kid. He resonated with me. Later, when we went to college, I found out he was actually the young master of the Song family. Even crazier, he was willing to give up that identity for a woman. "You're insane," I told him. "I've never seen someone so obsessed with love." He just laughed, his frail shoulders somehow carrying the weight of the world. You don't understand. This is love. Later, they got married and seemed happy. But then Mike came back, and I had to take a moment to breathe. I was furious. Why do good people die young while scoundrels live on? Victor had a terminal illness, a hereditary disease that was incurable. His parents had never taken care of him a day in his life, and they left him with this fatal illness. What made it worse was that Diana, fickle as always, wavered between sides. Then, when I saw my best friend being cyberbullied, my anger boiled over. During that time, I went around using my connections in the police department to gather every detail about Victor's life, compiling everything into an essay. I was waiting for the perfect moment to release it. But then, Victor nearly died. I had once thought that Diana's attempt to clear things up online was a sign of her conscience, but she nearly killed Victor. After an argument with her, I saw the light in Victor's eyes fade. He no longer wanted to go to Tibet. He wanted to leave this place that had filled him with so much despair. Mike had already taken his family, killed his grandmother, and now he wanted to take his beloved wife too. Victor had lost the will to live before he died. All he wanted was to see Tibet, the place his grandmother had once called home. For the first time, I wanted to cry. I'm sorry. Please give me a moment. But I finally took him there. At the Patala Palace, he scattered his grandmother's ashes. His body, as frail as a stick, still wanted to make that pilgrimage. It was an 1,100-kilometer journey. Even a physically strong adult man would have to summon incredible courage for such a trip. Yet he didn't hesitate. From Lhasa to Yamdrok Yumso, he began his pilgrimage. Later, his journey was live-streamed, gaining more and more attention. After he admitted that he was an orphan, I knew it was the right time to release the essay I had written. Let me bear all the blame. Victor could leave this world with no regrets. But then Diana came running back, crying and making a scene, annoying everyone around. Even though Victor's body was falling apart, his eyes began to shine with life again. I felt it. The fire that had burned in him since high school was rekindled. He rejected Diana and decided to continue his pilgrimage, determined to die in Tibet. I didn't try to persuade him any longer. Once Victor made up his mind, there was no changing it. Whether it was using his position as the Song family's young master to win Diana back then, or this pilgrimage now, no one could change his path. I stayed by his side. Victor died under the open sky at Namtso. I buried him with a smile. He once said, "We cried when we were born, so why shouldn't we smile when we say goodbye?" I looked up at the blinding sun, my eyes stinging with tears. Brother, you really picked a good place. In the next life, I, Marco, will still be brothers with Victor.